Meanwhile, that October 7th happened. Something grew in me. This rage. Every time you negotiate, you're basically setting the precedent for the next people getting abducted.
100%. 100%. He wants answers and he wants them to be held accountable. Another episode of Soothing Semantics. I am your host, Rafi Pinsky. Make sure to subscribe, smash the like button, leave your comments. Happy Passover. And of course, South Florida weekly newsletter. Make sure to sign up for that. You can do that on my Instagram. And this week we have Roi, who I came across several months ago. He's a man with very large testicles.
It's
He
either
takes
that or
he
I'm very stupid.
That's for either or. But have you seen? I'm not a big South Park guy, but did you see this? There's a famous like South Park video where the guy's wheeling his balls around in like a wheelbarrow.
No, I haven't seen that.
I'll have to show it to you. You can literally look it up. You can Google South Park balls in a barrel or like anything like that, and it's very funny.
Wow, be sure to do that.
Yeah. Well, you don't need to do that because you're already doing it right now. So the reason I say that Roy has a big set of nuts is not because I've seen them, but because he goes around to all kinds of Israeli provocateurs on the left, on the Israeli left, and he doesn't just have dialogue with them, but he'll go into Judea and Samaria and he'll confront leftists on the Israeli side who are maybe connected to B'Tselem or Haaretz, or they're simply provoking Jews that live in Judea and Samaria, and he'll provoke them, he'll question them, he will put them in their place, and he'll have this dialogue where he wants answers and he wants them to be held accountable. And it's something that he's really committed a lot of his time to. Who's that guy? Who's that other guy that's become super popular now? What's his name? Yosef, maybe? You know who I'm talking about. There's like the young dude.
A dude that does the same things?
Yes, yes.
You're talking about the Israeli Arab guy?
No, no, the Israeli Jewish guy. You know
I
him.
mean,
You
we
were
got
you were
we got Mordechai, we got me,
I believe it's Mordechai. What's Mordechai's last name?
David.
I think that's who we're talking about.
Yeah, he's the one that started it all. He started blocking all the protesters. When they come back from their protest, he started blocking their vehicles. Because his claim is that they've been blocking the roads for 3 years and causing all of us a lot of pain. And he says that if they can block, the roads, then we can block them. And it's basically putting a mirror, show. And when he comes to do that, they won't sit and respect whatever he's blocking it. Like they usually do it for some kind of cause. And when he comes up to them and says, your car is blocked now for the chatufim, for the
Hostages.
hostages, so they won't have it. They have to go back to their coffee or their gym or whatever, wherever they're rushing to after their protest, and they won't have it, which is kind of funny because I was in my vehicle many times when they block the road and they approach you with their signs and they say, this is for the hostages. And I would I hung my head, as they say. I put my head down and I wouldn't say a word and I would sit there patiently and say, for the hostages, I cannot complain. But these guys, they'll complain. They get violent. The
So what is
liberals.
it? Yeah, yeah. And it's not and it's not just that I think you're doing a very important thing. I think it's entertaining as fuck, dude.
You should see all
Especially
the death threats that I get from all over the world.
what are people saying to you? Death threats in
Everything
what sense?
from come here, come there, we'll take care of you, all the way from that to like really, really racist, like unbelievable anti-Semitic comments like Jew, pig, Hitler was right, soap. I could go into my phone. It's horrible. I mean, it's endless.
Yeah. Uh, so just want to quickly hold on one second. I want to just quickly go over this list that we covered. Okay. Uh, what has it been like with legal matters, right? Have a lot of these leftists tried to sue you? I'm sure all kinds of
Yeah,
not, I mean, you've gotten in a lot of their faces. What's kind of been the whole because it takes a lot to do what you're doing.
yeah. I have one case in court that's I don't know when it's gonna start, but it's basically the government took it. I mean, not the government, how they say the Paklitut. Um, they took the case, and they're uh, basically uh, saying that I trespassed or whatever, and I attacked whatever the whole thing that happened in that tent in Ras Al Ain. So we're gonna have to give them a big fight over there. And then I have other cases in court, like maybe two others, where there's one lady that says that I sprayed her, and if you look at the video, I mean, we're talking about like 20 people attacking me from all sides, just because I turned up my siren on my megaphone on my speaker, and they decided in a big protest that I'm not allowed to make noise like them, and they
Hmm.
started attacking me from all sides, and then they bend me over and they're pushing me, and then when it got too much and it was a lot of people around me, I took out my spray and I gave it one spray and everybody cleared off, and she's suing me for that. And then we have one lawyer here. There's one radical left lawyer who took upon himself to go after people like me. So I put up his phone number, even though his phone number is available for everybody because he puts it on every little thing that he does. But so basically he says that people harassed him or whatever like that. But yeah, I'm pretty sure they're gonna keep coming.
A lot
This
to
is how
deal
they
with.
operate.
So why do you feel such a desire to do what you're doing? Like I know it sounds like an obvious question, but
That's a question that I ask myself every day, because my life was pretty good. I had sold out shows. I'm a musician, so I'm a
right.
producer, and I have my own festival that happens like 3 times a year here in the park. And I've played sold out shows all over the country for at least 3 or 4 years. And meanwhile, that October 7th happened. And something happened, something happened and something grew in me, this rage. Uh, First of all, for everything that happened on October 7th, the humiliation and the brutality, and just some kind of Viking spirit awoke in me, and I started making all these little short, uh, movies on Instagram and TikTok. Then I felt like it wasn't enough. I felt like I wanted to go and talk to the people, and in the protests, and hear what they have to say and why they're doing what they're doing. And when I got there, I started learning about the liberals, about the progress, about cancel culture, about the violence the liberals um, have in them, the so-called liberals. So, I went over to the protest and I started talking to them about, like especially people that hold up signs that say, that we're a conquering nation and that whole thing with the Palestinians. And so I would go over and ask them, if you were there on October 7th, and they would cut your son's fingers in front of you and rape your wife in front of you, would you still call out for peace? And you know, of course they say immediately, they say, yes, of course I would. And then I would say, look into the camera and please say the names of your relatives and say that if that happened to them, that you would call out for peace. And of course, none of them would agree to do it.
Hmm.
And just I grew more and more angry at these people. And the more I went to interview them, I became more and more against them, I guess, in a way. And yeah, it's a mixed crowd. It's you have the crowd of the real extreme leftists who are like all about like against Israel, against the soldiers, saying that
Yeah,
we're
the
a
Amir,
conquering
the
nation.
the Amir Khatsronis of the country.
Yeah, and yeah, but he's a clown, like he's just like doing it for fame, like he's trying to push your buttons, like he knows what irritates the Israelis and he does it. That's what he prides his himself of, like being annoying and provocative.
Hmm.
Um, but you have all these people that go up to Judea and Samaria to like harass Jews up there. And then there's another crowd, which are the liberals, the leftists, who are there to protest about whatever, other subjects. So the extreme leftists, I come really aggressively, like I just come over to show that we're resisting them. I want the enemy to see that we are resisting them, and they cannot just show up at the middle in the middle of Tel Aviv and just hold these signs and let Al Jazeera and all these TV stations broadcast all that around the world and without a resistance. So with them, I'm very aggressive. But with the other crowd, I just came over to ask questions. But, you know, they're violent. And the more I went over, I discovered that they're not liberals. You know, they're very violent. So
Right.
that's like, it's two different crowds.
Yeah, they're
And, once I started, there's no way back because they start canceling you. They call to cancel your shows and you find yourself deep deep in that hole, like you can't go turn back anymore.
it's hard to have the energy to deal with them on a regular basis. I mean,
It's very hard. I mean, I wake up every morning and I sometimes I wish I had a button to erase it, but because I'm
why do we
taking
have
on
such an
heavy duty on
what
me.
sometimes when you have a push to do it, you can't explain it, for you it's just you feel like it's a fight you have to fight, I guess.
Yeah, it's a fight for survival. Once I
Mm.
saw all the Free Palestine movements all over the world and this like big movement against the Jews, like I've never seen before, while we're fighting in Gaza after this, horrible massacre, Holocaust event. I just couldn't be quiet anymore. I couldn't be silent anymore, and I had to take things to another level. And I guess I did. I went really far, and now I'm kind of labeled as like an extremist, like bully, whatever, violent person. But it's a very selective way to look at things. Like if you really want to look at my materials, you'll see that I'm not the one that starts any violence ever. I always
Right.
come to talk, even if these people in Judea and Samaria, I'm trying to talk to them for a while, and I'm trying to say, look, we have to talk because this is not going to get solved if we don't talk. And if you're up here and you call yourselves peace activists and you're not willing to talk to me, and as soon as I walk into a territory that you guys you took over um, without any contract or anything, it's like public land, it's Israeli land. And you
Right.
start attacking me violently, you guys are not peace people, you're not peaceful at all.
Right. Yeah, they're just they don't care to make any sort of dialogue with you, obviously. They're just looking to they're looking to make peace with everyone else but the Israelis. That's the reality.
That's kind of weird, I mean, I think they're doing a really bad service for themselves for anybody who has the brains to see it. But if you're watching a cut up video of what their propaganda is broadcasting, then you only see me walking in and spraying them. which is,
Right.
it's horrible. I mean, I would never do that.
Right. So why do you think we have such an issue with self-hating Jews, with liberals inside of Israel, outside of Israel? What do you think it stems from? What's the mentality? Where's this mentality that we have such an issue with?
Well, I think the Jewish people have suffered a lot, and you know, if you look at the map, you can see how many Arab Islamic nations are on the map and how small Israel is. And really, it looks like a really retarded argument. The Jews have a really small piece of land, and they want to live there and have their own country. And when you have such a small country and such a dear um, um, price to pay for trying to maintain that piece of land, once people from your own people start talking like that, it's really it makes your blood boil, you know,
Hmm.
especially when Israel all over according to history, like we've always wanted to have peace and we always offered peace. And um, anybody who reads history will see that Israel always offered a two-state solution, and these people always refused. So it's just not fair, like if you're the peaceful kid in the kindergarten and you're always trying to be nice and they're always picking on you, and then your own buddy turns on you, it's just it doesn't feel like justice. And that makes your blood boil.
Hmm. Yeah, I know.
You
So
know.
I'm just wondering, I'm just wondering, like, why you think we have so many people who do that? Like, what do you think is the underlying psychology of why we have so many people or certain people that go against themselves and they go against their own, yeah.
There's a lot of reasons. I mean, you could say it's something religious. A lot of people here, they feel like somebody's telling them how to live, just because they have a 1 day off in the week that there's no transportation or stuff like that. But who knows what goes on inside the human brain? Like people's opinions, you know, they vary, and some people look at peace and look at the world as like from a very pink glasses, I would say.
Hmm.
Um, they want to believe that they can solve everything with a peaceful thinking, and I guess they don't realize that the Islamic jihad the way of thinking is not a Western way of thinking, and
Hmm.
they look at your um, kindness as weakness. People don't realize that it's a mentality kind of thing.
Right.
Um, but I think in every society, you'll always have the people that don't want to line up and don't want to like be a part of, the system. They have a lot against the system. Maybe it's something in their past. And I totally understand that. I understand where these people come from when they think about borders and religion and the country and whatever. And I always say that, I love that song by John Lennon, Imagine. Imagine there's no countries, no possessions, no religion, no nothing. But it's a beautiful dream where everybody's one and everything is peaceful, but it's a dream. We don't
Right.
live in a dream. We live in the jungle. And that way of thinking will get you killed, especially if you live in the Middle East. We're not living in Switzerland.
Hmm.
So they have the privilege to think that way and to act that way inside of a democracy, because the democracy allows them to go out and protest and do all kinds of things. But I think they're useful idiots, because eventually those people, if they get what they desire, which is like a, Palestine or whatever, a country that lives in Judea and Samaria and looks over them and has the advantage, from that point, I think they're the first people who will complain and the first people to get shot. All these liberals, the artists, the free spirit, thinkers, they're the first ones to get offended when fascism rises, and that's fascism that they helped create. They're not they're
It's
not
very, they're not what? What were we saying?
they're not realistic. I
Right.
mean, I wish we could live that way, but it's just not. It's not happening, man.
Yeah, it comes from this belief that everyone seems to wear the same shoes you do. Everyone seems to think with the same attitude of everything can be solved with dialogue. Like everyone wants peace, and if we could just settle our differences with dialogue, we'll be in perfect harmony with everyone. The reality is some people actually just want to destroy you. Some people have ideological, religious, and uh, a variation of other beliefs where they don't want you to be there or they don't want you to be anywhere. They just want to get rid of you or they want you to stay far away from them. And there's no dialogue you can ever have with them. I think when it comes to jihadis, actually, the kind of dialogue you can have is after you've shown them that they have no chance in defeating you. For example, you're seeing that now with the Lebanese government, not with Hezbollah, but the Lebanese government.
Right,
They were supporting Hezbollah. They were calling Israel the occupation, and they were supporting Hezbollah, and they were because they thought to themselves, Hezbollah isn't going anywhere. Israel can't deal with them. Israel's just kind of tolerating them and keeping them uh, to some degree. Hezbollah isn't destroying Israel, but it's still the main power in Lebanon, and so the Lebanese government knew that they had to kind of step back and shut up. But now that Israel's coming in full force, taking over southern Lebanon, killing the leadership, the pagers, the assassinations, the Lebanese government's like, Hezbollah's on its last legs. It might either be completely destroyed or be weakened to the point where we can actually assert dominance. Now we want to have dialogue with Israel
right.
because
Yeah, you got to earn their respect, and the way to earn their respect, the only way they know is through the sword. They
yeah.
don't know anything else. They look at you, if you're, they look at kindness as weakness and
Hmm.
trying to negotiate. And what I find really, really funny when we talk about these against the occupation people is that they're always rooting for peace and whatever, but like I said, they're not willing to engage in conversation with whoever's coming from the other side of their own people. When I try to talk to them, they're always very violent and they won't have any conversation. So it's I don't know. It doesn't make sense, you know?
Well, I think because, what I've been realizing is since October 7th, so many of the liberal talking points are very, very bad talking points. And it's really a lot easier to argue those points than a lot of people realize. And when I had Amir on my show, I don't know if you knew that. I don't know,
Yeah.
I think I told you. It's a 2.5 hour episode. If you do ever have the interest in checking out some of it or all of it, or whatever,
I saw
I
some
watch
of it, yeah.
I listened to 6 hours of Amir on other people's podcasts, Kilo Bivrit in Hebrew. And so I was really prepared for that episode. I watched it the day of. Like I was just doing other things and listening to it in the background. I even took some notes. And this way I was going to be prepared for everything this guy threw at me. And I was. And I noticed that I threw him off quite a few times where he was like, what do I say to that? I don't know what to say to that, you know? It's it's
And keep
it's
in mind that Amir, excuse me, but Amir talks about occupation and everything, but he owns property here in Israel, in Tel Aviv, which used to call Sheikh Munis. which
Yeah.
used to be Arab, whatever. So I don't know. It doesn't work out, like for somebody that doesn't want to be a conqueror, that dude still holds property here on Arabic land, so called, not that I think that way, but he's full of shit. Excuse my French.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's what happens when you don't have enough testosterone, Roy. It's really just this is what happens to a man when they're made of estrogen.
Oh,
Like
he's a man? That's new to me. Okay.
no, no. He might have a penis. I don't know if he's a man though.
Maybe he considers himself a strawberry or a dog. It's all fluid these days, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's what it's I say this all the time. I've said this a million times. I think you and I are both Ashkenazim, but I think it's an Ashkenazi mentality, akhi. I really do. It's not to say that it's that there are many of us that are right wing, that are, all over Israel, many, many very level-headed, strong right wing Ashkenazi Jews, but it's a known thing. And some people have tried to kind of push it away and they got insulted when I said it. I just said it's so clear to me. It's been clear to me for so many years. You see it in America. It's a huge, huge, it's so clear. The
Yeah,
reform movement, which is almost completely Ashkenazi, it's a mindset. It's this mindset of the way I see the world is the way everyone else sees the world. And we can solve everything through discussion. And if I want peace, it means they want peace. And
yeah,
if I'm too loud and too obnoxious and too proud, it'll offend people. It'll make them dislike me. And what's so funny about all this is when you try so hard to make people like you, very quickly the opposite happens.
yeah,
It's so interesting how the Mizrahi Jews are less hated but in the Middle East, even though they tend to be a lot more right wing. I find it very ironic. It's like the Ashkenazim are trying so hard to make everybody like them, and they're still the ones that get most of the hate. Don't you find that
yeah,
interesting?
yeah, totally. Totally. I don't know if they have some guilt from like I don't know, from like maybe from slavery or something, or I don't know what the hell.
But all Jews could have that feeling. Like you could argue all Jews could have that feeling. I think it just has to be. It's not a. I don't like dividing Jews, right? I think we're all one. I think it's a weakness. It really comes from a weakness, And the more Jewish people are willing to have a very strong identity, right? Because for such a long time, especially the Jews that lived in Europe and the shtetls had a very, they were allergic to anything confrontational.
Yeah.
What you're doing defies like 1,000 years of like Ashkenazi. It really does, though. I mean, we always had it, right? We had resistance movements and all these other things for sure. But what you're doing is it's like it's still something people don't see very often. Do you know?
Yeah, totally. Um, yeah, I don't think they know how to deal with it. I think that the Ashkenazis here in Israel, the leftists here are really in shock still from my appearance and my actions. Um, what are you gonna do?
They go and learn, man. Listen, it's something that has to change because it's a huge, huge uh it's a thorn in our side. It's making the survival for Jewish people outside of Israel much harder. They're doing so
True.
much nezek. They're doing tremendous damage to like to us moving forward and defeating our enemies and having a long-lasting peace. And making things work with the Arabs in the country, the Arab Israelis in the country. Every time they go out and they do what they do, they make it so much harder for both sides because they give legitimacy to this Palestinian cause.
Which
They just make
is
everything. Yeah.
another joke, that word Palestinian. I mean, it's just a joke, man. It has nothing to do with Arabs. That word Palestine has nothing to do with them, that it's retarded. I spoke to this young guy yesterday at a protest, and he was holding a sign from the river to the sea. This Israeli guy, he's holding a sign from the river to the sea. And I asked him, "You're protesting against the war against Iran, but you know, in Iran, you wouldn't be able to protest. They'll shoot you." And he says to me, "Why do I have to worry about their, government over there and whatever?" And I asked him, who's the Muslim Brotherhood? Iran. Who's Iran? Isn't Iran Hamas? Isn't Hamas the one who slaughtered our people? And then he was like, "Oh, but I mean, it's retarded, retarded."
He does. It's so crazy how he doesn't understand what you're trying to get to. What you're trying to get to is, don't you realize that the thing you're advocating for is not going to allow you the freedoms you have now? Like that's what you're essentially asking him. You want the people that hate you, right? To now be the rulers of the country because you feel so bad for them. You think we did such wrong things to them. So you want them to rule the country that you live in, which will then mean that you won't have any of the freedoms you have, such as the fucking freedom you have to say the dumb shit you're saying right now. And he's like,
Yeah,
well, Iran is in a different part of the world, and so it's don't you get it?
retarded. Seriously. I always say that there's no bigger cure to that disease than a couple of Nukhba, like Hamas terrorists in your house,
Mhm.
raping your wife and cutting off organs off your kid. I have a few friends like that changed their minds after that happened to them, and they saw their kids' arms blow off their body, and a kid that told his father, "Please bury me with my surfboard," and that's the only way you can change these people's minds. They won't learn until it happens to them, and that's
Dude,
very
it's the only
unfortunate.
it's the only way. It really is the only way. You know what though? I think from a spiritual level, this is what happens when you take very smart people and you don't give them enough of a purpose. So even if you're not the most religious person, but you have a connection to spirituality, you have a very strong identity with your people, you know the history and you value it, then you have a very good center. You where, for example, you don't have to be a religious person, but to you it's so clear. You have a country, you have a people, you're willing to die for them, fight for them. And so you can't be influenced by this stupid way of understanding the
Yeah,
world.
it's a Viking kind of mentality. It's kind of
Yep,
like
yep.
Sparta.
Hmm.
You have to be united. You have enemies, and you have to be like a one, like a fist. And
I'm imagining you in a Game of Thrones scene and you see and it's raining outside and maybe you're on your horse, you got your sword in the back and you see it's raining, it's pouring rain and you see Amir Khatroni just kind of trying to get covered by a rock. He's like, "Please help me, please." And he goes, "Oh no, not you. You are the reason we are in this mess." Like he's blaming you for you're one of him, but he's blaming you for
yeah,
the reason he's stuck in the rain. And you just like roll your eyes and you reach your hand out and you throw him with one hand like onto the horse with you.
yeah, yeah. Have you seen that little short film that I made with that protester? She's standing in the middle of the road, and she's like, "Stop the killing in Gaza, the innocent people in Gaza." And then I walk over like the angel of death, and I touch her, and then all of a sudden we're in October 7th in one of the kibbutzes, and she's at a house. Have you seen that?
No.
You should see that. And she's like, suddenly her daughter is there, and she's like, "Where are we? What are we? What is this?" And I'm telling her, it's October 7th now, and they're about to break into your house. And I want you to be ready. I want you to go wake up your husband and get your kid together. And they're about to go in here. They're going to rape your daughter. They're going to kill your husband. They're going to kidnap you. And I want you to be ready and understand what's going to happen. And she's like begging for her life, like Amir. She's begging for her life, and I say to her, she's like begging me to stop the situation, and I'm like, I can't stop the situation because these people are innocent. And then she says, "What? They're not innocent. They're about to break into my house and kill me." And I'm like, "Didn't you sign that, letter saying that we're killing innocent people in Gaza and whatever?" And she begs for her life. And then I give her the option. I say, "Do you want it to be somebody else and not you?" And she says, "Yeah, I don't care. Just not me, not my family." And then in 1 second, she's back with the sign out there, and she's just completely shocked, and she's like, she walks away. So it's actually one of my first.
I have to
Uh,
see that. So you made like a whole edit? I have to see what that looks like.
yeah, hey, you should go on my Instagram. I actually released it on Roi Star 1980 on that account. I just released it like yesterday again.
Oh, it's a new video. Oh, you released it again.
No, I reposted it.
Okay.
So you should watch it. It's pretty good. Actually, I have it with some English subtitles too.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. Cool. Um, yeah, I'm like picturing all the I'm picturing all these things with him. I even asked Amir, I said, if somebody took your dog, because that's like the only thing he loves. He loves his dog more than he loves his dog more than Zacharia. His dog's name is Zacharia, right? So he loves his dog more than anything in the world. I said, if someone took your dog, you know, what would you do? Would you be willing to kill 50,000 people? And he's like avoiding the question, running away from the question. And I looked at him and I said, Amir, you would destroy planet Earth for that dog. I already know
Of
your
course you
type.
would.
I know your type. You wouldn't want any, you wouldn't be the one to actually do the violence. But if someone came to you and said, listen, just press this red button. I just need you to press the red button and then we're gonna get your dog back. Don't worry about what happens. We'll kill like
Of
200. He's like, get me my dog back right now.
course.
Get it back. I don't care. Kill everybody. I don't care. Destroy the whole world. I be here alone with my dog. I don't care if you have to kill babies. Just get my dog. You know how exactly like get my dog back. He'll kill the
He's
bro. He'll destroy the galaxy. He'll fucking this dude. When you have people like this, they don't it's I understand the psychology, but it's such retarded. It's such it really all stems from just being a pussy, a huge pussy. That's really what it is, to be honest with you.
makes your blood boil, really.
Oh God,
And
it's so aggravating. But you know what's amazing? You know what's amazing? That 2.5 hours really showed me that I understand how the world operates, and he really doesn't. Because he's just a spoiled dude from Tel Aviv, or I think whatever it is. He's just a spoiled dude who had rich family and never
right.
really had to go through much difficulty. And it really shows you when you go through struggles in life, you end up having a beautiful life. When you go through a life that does not have struggle and you don't seek struggle, like you always are looking for the easy way out. You want life to be as easy as possible. You end up miserable. You end up doing miserable things. You end up with a completely skewed way of looking at the world because you've never stood for anything. You've never fought for anything. And there's such a clear, when I looked at me and then I looked at him and I saw him with his pink room and he looks like the Hobbit. He looks like Smeagol from he really does. He looks like Smeagol. The guy looks like his bones are about to break. Um,
Very,
it's
very
just
interesting analysis about him because if I look at myself, I went through a lot of struggles and I know what it's like to be hungry. I know what it's like to sleep on somebody's floor. I know what it's like to sleep in your car. Um, I know what it's like to not have anything. And I went through that whole thing throughout my whole life. And if you put me against somebody like that always had everything they needed and they have money and security, it's easy to just say, "Hey, let's be peaceful." We're even though I'm kind of like surprised by him because if he's a professor, and he doesn't know how to read history, like it's kind of weird to say that we are the conquerors, that we are the colonizers. It's really weird
It's
for
not
somebody
about
who's a
that.
professor to say that.
It's not, you know what's funny? It's not even about, he knows all of that, but he doesn't care about what was. It's an academic brain, Achi. You're so intelligent, you're an idiot. Your intelligence makes you stupid. It's like you have that all the time. You have these professors in the US that are, they've read all these history books and they're all educated and all that, and yet they have the most idiotic way of thinking. There's so much psychology to it. Jordan Peterson talks about it. I'm sure you've heard of Jordan. He goes into this. Ben Shapiro talks about this. There's all kinds of people who really break this down. There's Dennis Prager, maybe you've heard of him. These are they really help you understand how some people in the education system can sound so intelligent, but then when it comes to the way of seeing the world and understanding humans, they have this utopian thing of like, we could all live in peace and harmony if we just hug each other.
Sure, I mean, I'll buy it if it's something that it's not, but it's not realistic. I'm all for peace, but like I said, we live in the jungle, and it's just funny for me to for people to like ignore history and say I don't care what happened before, and all I want to do is grab a bunch of people with kafiyas, and walk over to their house and knock on the door and say, "Hey, you live here? I don't care if you lived here for many years. Now it's my home." And enter there and have these people sit there and say, "Okay, now get along with these guys. They're gonna live at your house for a few months, and I'm sure they're not going to react too well to that.
Right,
So that's one kind of experiment that I really want to test. I want to knock on his door with a few people with kafiyas on and say, "This is our home now. Get lost."
right, right. It's ridiculous. So now I want to shift over to another discussion about the Chok Onesh Mavet, the death penalty law
Yeah.
for terrorists. So give me your analysis on that. And give also a little bit of a background on it, just for people that are listening that don't really have a lot of information.
The penalty for the death penalty exists here is an army rules. It exists in the army, but was never implemented. They never executed anybody other than one guy from the Holocaust here.
Eichmann, yeah.
That's right. But basically, this law, I don't think it's complete because honestly, these terrorists, I think they're not intimidated by being killed by the system if they get caught because they go out on a mission to die anyway. But I think that law would be more perfect if you would execute the person and then you would take over their land and their home. And basically, their family would suffer from it. And then before you think about committing a terror act, you should look at your mom and your dad and your house and think if you want them to pay the price.
You
Once
know,
it's
it would
only
stop it
on
real quick.
you,
You know, it would stop it real quick, my friend. If you took a little piece of pork and you put it on like their chest or something, or in their mouth, or if the person doing the execution was a woman,
right?
because that would be, yeah. But the thing is we don't operate that way. It's not how we operate. And I like that we try to do things so morally. But if we just made if we took a tiny piece of bacon and just put it and just wrapped it around their ear,
That's funny, man.
I'm just saying,
Uh,
it's crazy that suddenly people would be really afraid to try things. It would change a lot of things. Yeah.
maybe I should try to make that law happen, if I could run for office, But
Ben Gvir would be all over that, right?
totally bacon. All we needed is some bacon. But I think Arabs, like the land is very has a lot to do with their respect, and without land, they don't have respect. And once you start taking the land, it really hurts them.
Mhm.
So that's what I think is missing in that law. And of course, you have all these leftists here trying to say that it's inhumane. And of course, the first question that they ask these lunatics, they want to ask about uh, Jew terrorists. This is the
Mm.
first thing that comes to their mind when they're trying to pass a law against jihad terrorism. Is what would happen if a Jew kills an Arab? Should we execute him? And that just goes to show you the way of mentality, their way of thinking, when it's clear that the numbers are not even close to like how many Jews kill Arabs out of like terror, if you want to call it terror. I don't think you can call it terrorism. Um, but that's the first thing that comes to their mind, and I think it's sick. Um, you cannot compare the numbers of how many Arabs kill Jews every year and how many Jews are involved in incidents where Arabs are getting killed, murdered. And I just think it's crazy that's the first thing that they think about.
But it is a good devil's advocate question though, because it's something a lot of people are going to wonder. So even though I hear your point of the number differences, what's your take on that? Let's say a Jew does kill an Arab civilian, like whatever it is. Let's say they do it not for self-defense. They just decided to light a house on fire, or they just decided to walk up to someone and shoot them, theoretically.
Right. I think that the to call it Jewish terrorism is a wrong thing to do. I don't think that could be a term, like Jewish terrorism, something that comes from within. I think
Okay.
terrorism is usually something that comes from outside and usually comes from some kind of entity that is not a country. It doesn't have a government, doesn't have like like a state structure. And if somebody commits a crime as a citizen of the country, they should be, they should sit in jail for the rest of their life. But to start calling it Jewish terrorism is to, you know, make something that doesn't exist. I mean, there are no Jewish terror groups, that go out and do things. It's not organized terrorism. There are conflicts, especially in Judea and Samaria over land and stuff like that. And in some incidents, out of violence, somebody gets killed. And whoever does that, if they're a citizen, a Jewish Israeli citizen, they should be trialed and they should go to jail. But I think it's not a good term, to call it Jewish terrorism. it
Okay.
it it, it serves the jihad narrative, that they're
It's
that
complicated, man, because I have a soft spot for Jews. I mean, it's an honest feeling that I have, but I also think that, I don't want to incentivize those things either. Like if I saw Jews like going and just killing people, even if those people technically don't like us, then we have a big issue on our hands. So it's I don't know where I stand on that, to be honest. Because yeah,
fair
no,
enough.
because do I support the death penalty law? Yes. At the same time, I just hope it doesn't incentivize Jews to go and try to harm, like a 22-year-old just goes to a village. You know what I'm saying? Like,
No, I don't think we should murder anybody,
mhm,
and the numbers show that we don't do that on it's not in our DNA. We
right.
don't operate that way. And I think in every society there are a few rotten apples. And that doesn't mean that we should have in the dictionary something that's called Jewish terrorism just because of a few rotten apples. When you look at the other side and their whole mentality and their whole, you know, thing is to kill Jews, and
Mm.
it's in their culture, it's in their book. So that's why I don't think you can compare or even put it on the same plateau when you're talking about that law. I think
I hear you. Okay. I hear that. Uh, but you mentioned that you don't think it will stop them necessarily from killing unless you have unless you're taking land or things like that. What do you think of the reason that I thought of immediately, and that I mean most people thought of when they instituted this law, is that it's going to prevent hostage exchanges. Hopefully, it's going to prevent hostages being taken if they don't have anyone to bargain for.
Okay, that's a different issue. I mean, if you ask me, I would never negotiate over any
Mhm.
hostage. I know it sounds really, really bad, but I think every time you negotiate, you're basically setting the precedent for the next people getting abducted.
100%. 100%.
And if they would abduct people and we wouldn't negotiate, that they would understand that that doesn't work. And then there's no reason to keep abducting because you don't get any negotiation. It doesn't affect us in any way. And of course, if you look at it in the you go, in the microscope down to the family, or if it's your cousin or your father or your sister, of course, it's very painful to say something like that. I wouldn't negotiate over your sister. I wouldn't negotiate over your dad. But you cannot run a country like that, and you cannot run a war against terrorism that way, thinking about that specific mother
Right.
or a specific brother. You have to stop that. Um, you have to set a precedent and stop that kind of way of thinking that you can abduct people and that's going to give you some kind of leverage over the country. You
Very
you
true.
cannot play that game, and every time you play that game, you're basically signing the next, you know, contract
Hostage
for the
taking.
next
Yeah.
abductees.
Yep, yep. It's funny because the Torah actually talks about this. It says like there are certain instances where you maybe can negotiate, but if it's a bad deal, if it's an objectively bad deal, then you're not supposed to. And we've been making really bad deals.
Look,
Because they,
in the bottom line, if somebody like me was to lead the country in a time where we have hostages. And I would say we do not negotiate, when everybody would make a big noise. And after that, there would be no more hostages for like 20, 30 years. So at the beginning, everybody makes a lot of noise, but after that, everybody's going to thank you. So
Mhm.
it's hard to swallow the pill, but you have to swallow the pill.
Roy, that's been our problem though. That's why we're in constant wars is because instead of making decisions that fix the problems long term, we're always putting on band-aids. That's been our issue
True.
forever. We're a band-aid country. Mowing the lawn, band-aid, 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 band-aid. Oh, let's put this wall, that wall. We'll stop it for now. That's what we're always doing. We're always putting on the band-aid.
Yeah, it's kind of
So,
like paying a really dear price for buying something really cheap, When you buy
yes.
something cheap because you want to, save your money, so you're not going to buy like a really big like a really good product. You're going to buy something cheap, and then that product is going to, make you pay dearly because it's not
Yes.
a good product.
Yeah, and if and you might have to keep repairing it. If you don't have a lot of money, so you buy the cheap product thinking it's going to save you money, it's like buying a really shitty car and then you're constantly fixing the car because you can't afford a new one,
Right?
but you ended up spending a lot more money to fix it and you could have just saved the money to buy a better car that wouldn't have costed you so much money in the long run. It's a
Right?
very common issue. So next topic is what do you think needs to happen with Iran, Lebanon, Gaza, and the Middle East in general, so Israel can have lasting peace. So let's kind of go from Gaza, where now Israel has about with the yellow line about 54% of the strip. Hamas is still around. What do we do with that? And then move over to southern Lebanon and Iran.
Look, I honestly don't think that Gaza is gonna become this peaceful tourist attraction place, I think we're gonna go back to the same thing. And the main reason is that the people living there, their biggest nightmare is to live side by side next to a Jewish state. You know, that whole dream about whoever's gonna run it, who's gonna be responsible, you know, and whatever. Until you don't turn that place uh either as a part of Israel with local police and local education and give those people some kind of citizenship and be under the government's eye the same way as Tel Aviv is and Rishon LeZion is. If you're walking away from that place and you just kind of like build a bubble and you're kind of like far away, it's always going to continue being the same way. So
Mm.
I don't have a lot of hopes for that place. And eventually, I think Israel is going to have to take over that place and turn it into a part of, a part of Israel. And that's the only way I think maybe the people living there will have some kind of a chance for a normal life if their kids get, a certain education from the age of 0, and they're not taught to hate Jews and Israelis and and that takes us to Iran, which funds Hamas in Gaza. Uh, so that's what we're trying to deal with Iran, and I'm really hopeful that the people over there can overthrow the regime over there. Even though I'm not too positive, like I'm thinking if you ask me, I mean, I think a country that sends missiles, so many missiles over to your country should be conquered, They should be
Mm.
conquered. Like in the old days, no what, you would just have like 2,000 ships show up at your shore and that's it. Those ships would show up, the soldiers, there would be no air bombing and all these, like sophisticated methods, and like this like kind of like clean surgical way of trying to conduct a war. You would just have 2,000 ships show up at your shore and you would be done. And I
Yeah.
think we should go back to that. We should just take over a country that's, like trying to destroy us and is calling on the death of America and the Western civilization. And
That's another thing is because human beings are trying to be more moral, but by doing that, it creates a lot of challenges because we ignore human nature. So, bombing the hell out of a piece of land, but then trying to save the civilians is a very big challenge and risk because those civilians are now alive and now their city's destroyed and now we're giving them the opportunity to attack us. It's like, yes, you saved them, yeah, you spared their lives, but at what cost? So it's like, yeah, in principle I like the idea of not killing people if you don't have to. But if you don't, at least if you're going to go on a mission to save the enemy's civilians, many of which hate you anyway and would love to see you dead, but this morality that we've developed over time, which is like, doesn't matter, you have to save them. It's like, okay, but then you have to make sure that they don't have the ability to kill you later on. And if
right,
you
and
create a scenario, if you create a scenario where it's very nice that you didn't go and completely annihilate the other side, it's very nice, it's virtuous. But if that means that you're putting your own people at risk down the road, that's a very skewed morality because you're effectively putting your enemy's people over your people. You're prioritizing the people of your enemy over yours. And so Israel, if they want to save the Gazan people, they have to make sure that the Gazans have absolutely no way of harming us in the future. That is has to be the if you want to live right next to us and you want us not to annihilate you, then you have to we are going to make sure, we're not going to trust them to do it. We have to make sure you can never harm us again. That's just what it is. It's either that or we fucking annihilate. There's no other option. I think we don't want to admit because it's such a hard thing to say. It's not that hard for me
true.
to say because I just
I
it's it
think I think overall, in the end, it all comes from education and infrastructure, and you cannot trust these people. building their education system to love people and to love Israel and love Jews. And like I said, I think we should go in there and we should take over that piece of land and we should just take down the walls and build cities that are run the same way as our cities with local police and make sure that we know what kind of education, install the education system and force them to live. You can practice your Islam or whatever, but you're gonna live with a local police and you're gonna live with, you're gonna live in a Western society. You're gonna because there's no other way.
Hmm.
Once you put a wall up and you back away, they're doing all these things. They're building tunnels and they're preparing for another attack. And it all comes from education. For years and years, you let these kids grow up in this education system that tells them to hate us, and they're just condemning their younglings for another cycle of death. And it's amazing for me to see how many times we destroyed Gaza and they keep doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome.
Hmm.
It's heartbreaking. I
Well,
mean, I'm sure all these
but
kids over there,
we're
they
doing the
can grow
same thing,
up
meaning
differently.
in our own way, we're also doing the same thing, expecting a different result.
Yeah, of course,
Until
because
now,
we
I
have
mean,
a leftist government, even though we think that the right wing is winning the elections all the time, the way it acts is a very leftist kind of way.
that guy, that Persian guy, Yassian, actually made a very interesting point. I'm going to send you a video. I don't know if you saw what he just posted about the Likud. Did you see
Yeah,
that?
that he says that there are leftists. They give away land and everything that they do is completely leftist.
Yeah, and it blew my mind because I didn't even know all these things he mentioned, and I said that's crazy because all of these things that they instituted are completely antithetical to the survival of Israel. All of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have to make now we have an opportunity to make permanent changes into, a piece of at least 30 to 40 years. We won't have it perfect where it's the Middle East, but
You have to try.
we can create an opportunity where there's real lasting peace if we just stop making these weak decisions. If we just are willing to make very strong decisions and stand by the decisions and not waver from the decisions, we can have a really, really much better situation. But the problem is a lot of Jews don't have the fortitude to kind of see it through because there's so much pressure right before you get out to the other side of the tunnel where the sunlight is. There's so much pressure, the pressure squeezing us. And a lot of us can't handle that pressure, but that pressure is exactly what we need before we can get to the other side. The world pressure, the enemies, the wars, the economic pressure, the pressure of American Jews and Jews in England and Jews in France, but we all have to get together, embrace ourselves, put our seatbelts on, and be willing to ride the roller coaster. Because there is something I really think there's something beautiful on the other side, but it's going to take a lot of stress and pressure to be able to get to that point. And if we as a collective can do that, if we could brace ourselves, there's really a lot of positive outcome, I think.
Yeah, you have to go all the way. You have to go full house. What do you call it? Like you just have to go full house. You have to take all the chances. You
All the
cannot
yeah.
you cannot keep walking in the middle. You have to go over to the edge and go take a hard right and like you said, at the end of the tunnel, there's a light, but you have to go all the way. And you
Yeah.
can't keep playing all these games and stay like, be politically correct and, you know,
Yeah,
uh,
there's so many analogies I think of like what we've been doing as Jewish people since 1948 to such a large extent is we drive through that tunnel, right? And the tunnel gets narrower and narrower, and like right before the other side where it's sunny out, the tunnel gets very narrow. It gets like and it like suffocates us. And I
yeah,
think a lot for most of recent history, Israel's history, we've gotten really close to the end of it, but we saw how dark and tight it was, and we decided to just give up there. We decided to fold at that point, and then the tunnel caved in and just crushed us. Like just all the rocks and everything just fell on top of us, and we were like, ah, there's no light at the end of it. This is too much. Let's just stay here. And then the tunnel collapses, and now we're stuck in the tunnel. All that time, we literally spent, let's say, years walking through that tunnel to get to the other side, all to just get crushed right at the end.
I couldn't agree more, man. We need to
Yeah.
push through the tunnel all the way and not listen to anybody who's what I always talk about, like, what if your country was a ship, and you were surrounded by water, and and all of a sudden the pirates show up and they start attacking. So, there's always people on your boat that are like kind of like worried about the kids, on the sons of the pirates, and those people are the first ones you want to throw off the ship, because you know, there's nowhere to go. There's water all around. You have enemies. You have to take care of the problem. And yeah, totally. We cannot listen to these people anymore. And there's a known saying in Judaism that says that those who show mercy to the how do they say it? If you show mercy to the bad people, then you end up being bad to the righteous people. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
That's what you end up doing. So
It's very, yeah.
I think we need to start listening to that, and we need to take a hard right. And I think that overall, I think the right wing mentality is rising in the world, and I think that the leftists are really freaking out everywhere. That's why I think we're witnessing all these big protests, and in Israel specifically, they're burning, you know, they're blocking the roads and burning stuff, and because they cannot get to they cannot get elected, and
Mm.
their way of mentality is not um it's not getting the majority of the public. So they're
Right.
very extreme in their actions because they feel like they're losing that fight. And I think it's happening all over the world. I don't know what's going on in Europe, but specifically in the United States and in Israel, that's what I see. That the right is more dominating, getting stronger.
Well, it's just a question of where the country stands. Countries that are more liberal tend to have they tend to have things easier. They're not used to conflict, so they find other issues because humans are always going to find problems. That's just a human thing. Human beings, if the problems are first world problems and they don't really have to deal with things that, for example, Israel has to deal with, then they're going to find silly little things to complain about. Oh, these rights and those rights and this equality and that equality. They find, silly things to bitch about. But that just shows you have a very good society in a way, but you also need to create a tougher environment because now it's getting too soft. It's just human cycles. It's just history repeating itself. You create a
Definitely
very
when you're dealing with extreme Islam, you cannot play any games with these people. They want to take over the world, and they say it to your face. So, I mean, you really can't play with these people.
no doubt.
I'll cut your head off.
Amir Khatroni better get on that horse when Roi comes by and offers his hand. You know what I'm saying?
He will, he will. They always do.
I don't want to get on the horse. Amir, this
My
is your
dog.
actually. Can I take Zachariah too? Yes, you can take.
Zcharia. He named him after a Jewish name, not a Muslim,
I know, I know, I know. That's Amir.
why does he choose Jewish names for his pets? I wonder. And he owns property on Arab land. It's all just a big mind fuck.
Yeah, yeah, whatever. I gave Amir a lot of airtime on this episode today, but no, it's he's a good example. He's a good example of it. Yeah. Okay. So this will wrap up this week's episode.
But
Thank you
let me
guys,
just
as
ask you
always.
one more
Yes,
question
yes.
before we
Of course.
finish,
Sure.
if I may.
Of course.
What's it like in Miami, like being a Jewish, and especially if you walk around with like a, Magen David or anything like that? Like what's it like over there? Because I see a lot of videos, from all over the world, and I can't tell if it's just like one incident here, one incident there, or what's going on over there.
Miami is an amazing place to live as a Jew. You know, there are incidents here and there, but they're very far few in between. It's right now, it's probably the safest place to be a Jew outside of Israel. It's a
That's what
known
I
thing.
hear.
It's a great place to live. There's a lot of Israelis here, but I almost like I don't like that when I see Israelis that are here that are new. It's like, no, don't come. It's like, but I also understand them because they're tired of the rockets and the war and they just want to kind of chill out and enjoy. So I think it's become this kind of little Israel where they can take a breath and chill out a little bit.
Yeah,
Um, Now, I don't know how long it's going to last. I don't know if it's going to be a long-term thing. I mean, the local government here just really supports Jews, and they understand how important we are for the economy. They understand that without the Jewish people in South Florida and Miami and the surrounding areas, it wouldn't have exploded the way it has. It's just the economic growth has just exploded in the last 10 years.
right,
And they know it's going to become much, much more of a thing. I mean, Miami is going to be, it's already becoming the new New York in many respects. It's already doing much better as a state in many ways. And Jewish people have really great upward mobility. The lower taxes, you can carry firearms here. You can have 50 guns, 100 guns. You could have a fucking army at your house pretty much. And
so
it's a
all the
beautiful.
Jewish people in Miami, if you're watching this podcast, please send us your support, any financial support that you can. You go through my page and look at my links over there. We're fighting a very, very well financed radical left here, and we could use all the help that we can get in getting all these activists up to Judea and Samaria and fighting legal battles and everything. So if you're watching this podcast, please go on my Instagram, Roi Star 2026 or Roi Star 1980, and press the link and help support us financially in any kind of way. And we really appreciate it because we really need it because the right wing here is not financed and the left wing is very, very well financed. So
Go support them, guys. Absolutely. Absolutely. Uh, as always, make sure to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments, go follow Roy on his channels, go support his work so we can get these leftists uh, we can
cornered.
combat the right so we can just I'm sick of it already.
Tell me about it,
Of
man.
course, for all of your real estate needs, follow me at Rafi the Realtor. I would love to help you buy, sell, rent, or invest. Until next time, peace.
It was a pleasure, man. Thank you so much.